Back in the day, the ultimate streets football used to be this guy. He was so good that he had people like me trying to bust ankles just pulling the skills he did. This is the story of how this crazy winger became a nightmare for every defender in the toughest league in the world. Bolasy's career to the top didn't take the normal route. He was born in Lyon in France to Congolese parents, but when Bolasy turned 4, Bolasy and his parents moved to England, where he joined Rushden and Diamond's youth setup. And after that, his career took a different step up, but just not in the position he had been expecting. Went all the way to Malta to get first-team football experience. By the time Bolasy came back, he'd gotten the experience he needed. Plymouth Argyle decided to take a chance on him, so they offered him a 3-year contract. He was developing as a player. In his first season at the club, he finished with 3 goals and 5 assists in 44 games, but by the next season, he finished with 7 goals and had no assists. See, the problem now was that Bolasy was having on and off seasons. In between his Plymouth spell, he had a brief loan spell at Barney in 2010. But by 2011, Bolasy's season took off. In his first season at Bristol City, Bolasy balled out so hard that he got named the club's Young Player of the Season. With form like this, you probably have been expecting him to stay and kick on with the season he had. But instead, Bolasy wanted to leave because he was homesick. He wanted to return back to London after just a year at his new club. Bolasy handed in a transfer request, and lucky for him, a certain club had been keeping tabs on him in London. And once they saw he was on the market, they scooped him to make it official. Crystal Palace. In his first season in the championship for Palace, Bolasy hit up 3 goals and 7 assists in 43 games. But it's important to note that Bolasy's game was never about the stats, not necessarily the end product, but the stuff he did before that. Because, like everyone on the Palace squad knew, when it came to the 1v1s, Bolasy was a beast. It's like he was playing the game on easy mode, as he used to leave the defenders confused by his crazy showboating. As of October 2014 in the Premier League, Bolasy was 4th on the list of most dribbles completed in the league. Bolasy was a key part of the Palace team that gained promotion to the Premier League that year. He even becomes so good, he made his international debut in a continental competition, the African Cup of Nations with DR Congo. By the time Bolasy came back, he was now a star in the Palace team. He was even keeping Wilfried Zaha out of the squad. He didn't manage to get a goal in the league in his first season, but his 4 assists were enough to keep the momentum going into the next. And by 2014-15, Bolasy had leveled up. Scored his first career hat-trick in the Premier League. And mind you, it was also the first and only hat-trick scored by any Crystal Palace player ever. Bolasy ended the season with double-digit goal contributions for the first time in his career. He was also at the African Cup of Nations again, and he scored twice in the competition too. Bolasy was making waves, and he was once again catching the attention of the top clubs too. A couple of teams had been keeping eyes on him, but nothing concrete happened. He came into 2015-16 and maintained the same pace from the previous one. 12 goal contributions in 31 games, averaging a goal contribution in under 3 games. And at this point, the Toffees had seen enough. They had a new man in charge, and in turn, this new man wanted to make Bolasy their man. Everton copped him for $25 million. Bolasy's move to Everton was a mixed bag. On one hand, Everton was a better team compared to Crystal Palace. They were competing for a European spot in the league, so this was a step up. On the other hand, though, some of the fans weren't entirely convinced of Bolasy's ability at his new club. But to be fair, I'm pretty sure that would have been a small section, because… oof. Just to put this into perspective, Bolasy had now become the king of the streets when it came to dribbling. It was almost as if he could pull off a new move every week. From insane rabonas to crossovers, his skill comps on YouTube were bagging views every week. Truth is, in his first few weeks at his new club, Balassi was all set on improving his game too. He was completing more dribbles as well. He was completing 53.4% of his dribbles, which was up from the 47.5% he managed last season. His goal involvements were also up, 41.7% up from the 26.7% in the previous campaign. Balassi was looking like the kind of player the Evertonians wanted to see. The only player who had more dribbles than him in the 3 seasons he had spent at the club was Eden Hazard at Chelsea. Balassi was a different level, but just as his career was on the up, he soon suffered the biggest heartache of his life. In the game against United, Balassi landed awkwardly on his knee, and by the time the test results came out, what looked like a crazy fall was more serious. Balassi had ruptured his ACL and injured his meniscus too, and this was the turning point in his career. Before this, Balassi was electric. If I'm being honest, the stats didn't even justify how good he was. On his day, he could win a game for his team without even trying hard. A huge part of his game was his ability to quickly change directions and his turn of pace. Add the dribbling to his game too, and Balassi was the complete winger. But you see guys, for a player as explosive as he was, the ACL injury took out a major part of his game. During his rehab and road to recovery, Balassi soon realized that he wouldn't be that explosive player anymore. He still worked his way in, trying to stay fit again. He played for the club's under-21s in a game versus Leicester to see if he was match fit. Past that, and after being an unused sub in the game against Chelsea, Balassi made his league debut in the following game. He was back, but unfortunately, he wasn't the same. Balassi wasn't the guy the fans had fallen in love with or defenders became scared of. If anyone was scared, it was him. He did manage to score for the club back from injury, but in the next season, Balassi understood perfectly well what was going on. Ronald Koeman was no longer the manager when he got back from his 11th month injury. Marco Silva was the new man, and he wasn't exactly a big fan of Balassi, despite his talent, and Balassi was itching to get back on the pitch and try to get some rhythm again. So in the following season, he went off on loan. The loan move to Aston Villa was supposed to rejig his career, and to a certain extent it did, with 2 goals and 5 assists in 21 games. But the problem Balassi had now was his salary. At $70K a week, Aston Villa couldn't afford to pay all that, so they cut short the loan by January. And with his options limited at this point, Balassi decided to look elsewhere. Went on loan to Belgium to join Anderlecht, and he balled too. He only played 17 times for the club that season, but it was enough to see him bag 6 goals and 3 assists. That's at least a goal contribution in every 2 games. Still, the salary was proving much for a couple of teams who wanted to take him, including Anderlecht. So in the 1920 season, he was sent on loan again, this time to another country. He rocked up with Sporting Lisbon in the Portuguese top flight. Balassi played a total of 25 games that season, hit up 2 goals and 5 assists. Not exactly the numbers that would have been enough to keep him at the club. And the truth is, this became the summary of his career moving forward. He wasn't even included in the squad's list for the 2020-21 league season at Everton. So he went on loan to Middlesbrough in January of 2021 and finished with a decent 3 goals and 4 assists in 15 games. But at 32, Balassi was supposed to be in at the peak of his powers. Instead, he was battling it out in the Championship on loan. By the time he returned to Everton, Balassi only lasted days at the club. His contract was over, meaning he was now a free agent, and what followed next was a move to Turkey to join Çaykur Rizespor. Played here for 2 seasons, and currently, he's in the Brazilian top flight, playing for Criciúma. Balassi's career could have been so much more, man. In his peak, he was the definition of mid-2010 Barclays football. All the entertaining stuff you'd want to see on a weekend. Unfortunately, the ACL injury ruined his career. And now, he's just playing out the final days. At least it looked like he's enjoying himself out there. He's got a smile on his face. I bet that's because of our channel, though.